So today I have the fun and the excitement of coming and talking to you about the creator economy and specifically the rise it's had within the video category. Can't come here again and I'll put my ugly face on screen twice, but for those of you that haven't met, I'm Nathan Powell. Gay went into a little bit of my background. I'm one of the co-founders of Fabulate. But I think what's unique about my background is even all the way back to university, video's always been in my blood. And whether that's been at Fairfax or Nine, it's always played a real prominent role in my professional career into how I've either helped brands or helped the businesses that I've worked with be able to communicate to audiences and drive the messages that they're after. So 7 years again, a lot's obviously changed in that time. For me personally, a lot less up here, way more down here. But I think the industry itself too has gone through a whole lot of change. And the last time that I was here talking, I was talking about the rise and the growth of BVOD and how that it obviously started to expand and break away from what I would have called its traditional kind of medium as technologies evolved and as audiences have shifted as well. So if I look at creator marketing specifically, one of the really unique things about creator marketing is how many different people it touches throughout an industry. So you'll hear a lot of the stories today about how this is just specifically talking or touching the marketing industry. That discounts all the work that the platforms will do. That'll discount all of the PR efforts or even the product efforts and those kinds of things. So one of the challenges that we have in creator marketing is actually identifying a single unified number of how big it is. So this is a report that we look to that looks back over that same 7 years, just to give it a little bit of a kind of grounding. And you can see in that time in Australia, it's tripled. So it's gone from a relatively, I would say, small industry in the scheme of things, $380 million, to now last year hitting over $1 billion and this year on track to almost hit 1.2. And when you look at that number, I think it's an important thing to disconnect from. That's not the inventory that it's bought and boosted along with. That's just the content itself. So you can start to see how many different creators and how many different people this is obviously funding or feeding as it goes through as this industry starts to grow. And again, if I think back to the last time I was here talking about BVOD, that back then was a significantly growing category and a segment of the industry. And I think today we were talking, Nat was mentioning it's now $500 million in that same time. So I think it puts it and grounds it a little bit of perspective of how fast this category is actually growing. And one of the really exciting things about getting back to being back here is when you have an industry that's growing as fast as it is, it needs to have all of those mature elements, those grown-up elements, those processes, those measurement pieces. And that's one of the fun things that we see as a business that the IAB is obviously now starting to take notice and enter this space, because the more grown-ups are here, the better that the entire industry will grow. So this comes from last year's creator report. Globally, $37 billion the IAB reported of just on content, 26% CAGR, and as Gay mentioned, a 4 times faster growth rate than any other medium. But what's really interesting about that number is that doesn't include anything in social commerce. So that's another growing category of, I don't know if you've spent any time in Southeast Asia and things like TikTok Shop and all of those types of marketplaces. It's now so easy to go from creator content to be influenced to a purchasing decision right through to the infrastructure to purchase and connect. So it is a huge industry and it's one that's growing significantly as it goes through. And part of this growth, at the end of the day, dollars always follow eyeballs in every advertising medium that we've ever been in. But if you start to look at just the usage of how Australians are engaging with this content, tried to, being here at the IAB today, and all the platforms are friends, I've come here with an interesting stat from each one of them, just so everyone felt like they're represented as we go through. But you can start to see, if we look at just the number of video views alone, if I pick on Instagram, it's over 1 billion views a day. That's a day of people that are watching content, video content. Then you look at the reach and the breadth of the data that obviously these platforms have. So you can see here, YouTube is 19 million plus logged in users every month that are obviously able to consume and watch this content. And then this is the one that, based on my own usage, I'm gonna have to challenge this number with TikTok, but they're saying that the average number of the average time that people are watching content in a day is 90 minutes. So people are watching more than a feature-length film on TikTok each day. And when you actually start to sit there and think about this, that's just each one of those platforms individually. If we could get together and obviously provide a unified number, imagine the size of what those numbers could be. And when you start to think about, okay, that's the audience growth. Audiences have obviously shifted there from a consumption perspective, but why does it work so well? And I think it comes down to the fact now around this concept of trust in media and trust in content. And people are now moving towards this model where they're looking for their recommendations in this kind of concept of people-based selling. So people don't want to hear from, you know, the individual brand, they want to hear from the people that's obviously talking about that brand. You can see some of these numbers here that talks around why it's so effective. So 81% of consumers prefer being served content from creators rather than brands. 63% of audiences trust what creators say versus a brand. And then when you start to look at head-to-head content performance around individual creator content versus brand ads, what you can see is that creator content drives a 6 times higher ROAS when compared to just plain regular social ads. And then when you delve into this a little bit further, I think this is one of the things that is really exciting at the IAB and the large measurement project that's going to go on, is we can start to talk about the metrics that matter. But the metrics that are available to us today on how we compare both brand and creator ads, you can see that when you include creator ads in your content, you'll receive or deliver a 27% higher or an increase in ad recall, a 93% increase in engagement rate, and then for my mind and all the traditional marketing theory that I've consumed, a 193% higher 6-second view-through rate. And when you start to think about the longer you watch content, the more likely you are to remember, and therefore the more likely you are to buy. Those are starting to be the things that matter. One of the things that that marketers, I think, are still coming to grips with in creator marketing, is if they didn't have enough to worry about on a day-to-day basis, is just how diverse of a tactic it is. And I think often creator marketing just gets bundled so much into I'll just go to the most famous creator I can and that I can afford, and then I'll hope that that does all of the work for me. But what we see is there is more than 1.2 million creators, so this comes from the database, the data within our platform, that have more than 1,000 followers. And each type of those creators, I like to think of them as like making sure that you have the right tool to do the right job that you're obviously trying to do from a marketing perspective. And when you break that down, this might be a little bit hard to see from this slide, but I'm happy to share it around. But what you can see is that the further up the funnel you go, obviously audience is more important when you're driving that awareness perspective, but the pointier you get towards that point of conversion, the more important that your content is, and therefore the more control that you want to have over that in order to structure that. So you can start to see here all the different, or this is the best practices that we see across the tens and tens of thousands of pieces of content that we do. You can start to then plot your communication strategy to the type of creator that you'd obviously look to do as well. The other thing as well, I mentioned this a little minute ago, but the more time I spend in creator marketing, the more I start to think that it's got more in common with all of the marketing theory that we've all been taught forever and a day. I think one of the traps that you can fall into in creator marketing is you get told, well, you've got to leave it to the creator. The creator understands what they're doing. They understand the magic of their audience and all those kinds of things. And then the challenge that you have there is they're actually creating a really good piece of content, but there's actually very little transactional value for the brand when it comes to an advertisement. There's a great piece of research that was done by System 1 early this year, and basically what they found is that those fundamentals that we've all thought forever and a day when we're creating TVCs to create content still apply to creator marketing. So you've got to mention your brand early. You've got to incorporate your branding elements. And you've got to make sure that you have a clear thread linking all of your content. So one of the things that we see that brands often, I think, make a little bit of a mistake on is they'll go and engage 40 different creators, but then every one of those 40 videos will be different. So you're not creating that constant thread or that reconnection moment every time they see that piece of content. So what I thought I'd do is I'll give you a couple of examples. It's just quite fortuitous that I've had popcorners on the mind when I was doing this particular one. But I'll show you what is a great piece of creator content, but not necessarily as effective of an ad as it can be. And then I'll show you a piece of content that follows all of those principles, but still manages to keep it organic, engaging, and whatnot, so that it becomes, it still engages audiences. So I'll start with the first one.
Hear me out. If Miss Piggy and Sid had a kid, it would look like...
Michael, that is so mean! Stop!
I've got even worse for you.
Hear me out. If it and anxiety had a kid,
I don't know, like him. No, you look so much like him. You thought that was bad? If Regina and Blonde Squidward had a kid, it would look like...
I'm taking that as a compliment. He's kind of slay. Hear me out. If Pauline Hanson and Brave had a kid,
Pauline Hanson, Brave. I just think more curls and I look exactly like her.
you do.
Alright, I'll be back.
Come on, dude. Where were you? Michael, you sprayed it on me.
I want to look more like Brave, so I'm using the Garnier Fructis Curls method. It's working. I look more like Brave now, don't I?
You do.
There's 4 steps.
Ringlet, dude. How did you get the curly hair and I didn't?
We're like twins now.
All right, we're gonna go catch a flight. Let's go.
All right. We all had a good chuckle at that. It's a good piece of content. The creators are phenomenal. They did a great job on that. The challenge was, it was 36 seconds before the brand was first mentioned. And what we know from both the data and the best practice that we see is less than 10% of videos on social ever get to 6 seconds. So that if you're a brand and you're boosting that piece of content, or you're even posting it yourself, the chances are that all that investment that you've put into that piece of content is obviously wasted, no matter how many engages, comments, likes, shares it gets, because very few people will have got to the end of that. And also, there was no call to action, so they weren't actually asking someone to do it. So if we go into the same creators, and we can see how all of those concepts are applied, you can see that even if you're watching it for a couple of seconds, there's still brand value that's extracted from it.
Is popcorn is more like a chip or popcorn? We can't seem to agree. As you can see, it is more like a chip.
No, it's clearly popcorn. Just try it.
I have. It's crunchy like a chip. And it looks like one too.
It tastes like popcorn.
No, it's a chip. It's a chip.
No, it's popcorn. Look at the texture. That is popcorn.
Because we can't seem to agree, we're going to go down to the warehouse to ask my employees what they think. Whoever gets the most votes wins.
Here we go.
They just smell like popcorn.
It's more like a chip.
Popcorn.
Apparently it tastes more like popcorn, but what do you guys think?
So you can start to see there, the brand was featured in the first frame, it was prominently featured. The narrative was much more connected in and around the product itself. So whether you watched for 3 seconds, 6 seconds, or all the way through to the end of that video, the brand was extracting some value from the content as well. Another thing that creators provide brands is 2 things. It's both affordability and diversification of content. So I'll show you this example in a sec, but this is a video, an ad that we did for GWM to launch one of their vehicles in this country. And if I think back to the old days on how I would have gone through and done this, I would have sent out a brief either internally or to a creative agency, would have come back with a $60K price. I had to worry about so many different rounds of scripting and talent, and it probably would have taken me 3 months to do it. We're now in a situation where you've got access to the right data, the right talent, and be able to turn these concepts around in the better part of a weekend and having it available for you when you log on the next morning in your inbox.
Let me take this picture for you, baby.
Oh yeah, it's yours. Get in, let's go. Let's go, G. One more, last one. Oh, let's go.
So yeah, again, had a little bit of fun in there, but it still obviously kept all the regular tropes of what those traditional car or automotive TVCs would be. And the beautiful part is that technology has now got to this point where this sort of creativity is available to all sorts of different creators, and you can start to do that at scale. So I've picked on that $60,000 price point just as a random example in my last one. But you can see that each one of these cost a fraction of that, and meant now that the brand in question could obviously have a whole lot of diversity of assets so that they could service all the different targeting segments that they require in and around the social platforms. Lastly, one of the other exciting things that I think creator and social obviously affords us is all of the data that's available from them. So, they get a little bit of a hard rap maybe sometimes of being walled gardens, but if you know how to obviously extract and to be able to interpret the data, there's lots of cool trend points that you can utilize. So one of these we call is trend jacking. So there's always something that's going on social. And if you're one of the brands that's nimble and is able to find the right creators, reach into and develop that content in an engaging fashion, you can actually see really strong results. So Estee Lauder is one of the brands who have jumped on trend tracking as part of their content. And what they've seen is by leaning into culture and moving fast, while still protecting all of the brand requirements and brand safety points that they need, have seen really, really strong results. So this is a uplift study. I'm glad they're still popular amongst all the survey respondents at agencies, otherwise that's going to make the rest of my presentation really awkward. But what we can see here is it delivered a 9.5% lift in ad recall. And this is against a really, really established brand amongst this target audience. And by them injecting culture and trends into the content, when you use that against a baseline of just what the regular creator lift does, it was 2.2 times more effective than that. So I think you've now got all of these kinds of tools and resources at your disposal, and it's just now a matter of finding what those right combinations are for your brands. So as I close, these are the three key points that I've talked about. Obviously, I didn't mention too much about AI today in this presentation. That's another thing that's coming for this category. But this is now the default way that most people consume video. And I think because that definition of trust has shifted and technology's made it so easy for people to connect and communicate, these creators are now just like mini publishers in their own right. And they'll provide you with the same data and the same intel that we probably would have done as well. Creators also aren't a channel. That's the other thing I think as an industry we probably need to move on from a little bit. They are omni tools in the way that you can use them. They're both top, middle, and bottom funnel and how they do it. And cost is no longer a barrier. I think if you're investing in social, find a way to segment off a portion of that, because you can be quite smart and quite intelligent with how you obviously do that. And the results that you'll see are quite significant off the back of that as well. So that's all I had to share. Thanks a lot.
You okay for questions?
Yeah.
Any questions for Nath? I have a couple, if not. Nathan, you've worked in media companies.
For 100 years, yeah.
For 100 years. How can, they're the original owners of talent.
Yep.
So how can those two worlds come together, and how can that help media owners make more money?
We are finding that a lot of traditional media owners are now looking to creators to be that talent pipeline for content creators of the future. So this is not a secret. Mamma Mia is one of the brands that we obviously work with, and we use all of our technology to help them deliver on that. And they're now, where the idea makes sense, they're obviously connecting and aligning a percentage of that particular activation to creators, and both activating it on their own assets and blowing it up on social for additional reach as well.
Great. And 1.2 million creators.
Yep.
Seriously.
That's just ones that have over 1,000 followers. I'm sure, Gay, we could look at your account. You can be creative.
I was just going to say, who's got more than 1,000 followers in this room?
I'll have your data.
Yeah. Awesome. Any other? Yep, we've got Steve.
Hey, Nate, good to see you again.
Hello.
Distinctive brand assets, influencer being spread, or running a campaign over influencers, giving them the freedom to create the brand creative the way they feel they need to. What's your advice to us in agency land with regards to how to best juggle that?
Yeah, I look at it a little bit like a tightrope. So I think if you give too much freedom, you saw the Garnier example there, I think that was probably too much freedom and not a tight enough rope for the creator. So they're always great at writing and at building content, but they may not necessarily be the best marketers. So I think they still are open for ways in which they'll deliver on the rules and the brand rules that you want them to give. I just think you need to be incredibly upfront on what those rules are so that they know what those barometers are. And then they'll come back to you with an idea that they know is still going to work and still be effective. But you don't want to go to a point where you're providing full scripts for creators. That's a bridge too far. I think of it like a tightrope, and I always kind of tend to lean more towards the marketer side than anything else. But if this was a tightrope and this was authenticity and this was the brand message that you need to do, I'd be kind of tilting as far this way as you can when you're working with creators without toppling over. So you still need to make sure that you don't lose that magic sparkle, but you have to give them those marketing fundamentals. Otherwise, you'll see examples like that.
Thanks. A follow-up question. when you pair it with paid media, in your experience, what are you finding is the most effective combination or style of combinations?
So we don't do just organic content. I think the best way to do creator content is to absolutely have a segment of paid media to boost it. I think that's probably where a lot of brands might have had the disappointment factor. They'll create this great content, and then for whatever reason, the algorithm doesn't like it that day. By being able to have that boosting there, it means then that you can target the right reach. It means you can engage new communities, and as long as you follow those fundamentals, like there's a whole nother presentation on that we can run through, but those fundamentals, it'll perform in your boosted capacity.
And one final question.
Come on, waiver.
I promise. Are you seeing any differences across the socials with respect to how to best engage and get the most effective combinations?
Yeah, absolutely. So the advice, and I think this is a mistake that people made very early on when TikTok came around. They took whatever worked on Instagram and tried to apply it on TikTok. They're totally different platforms, and they all do different things, but they also do the same things. But the way in which an audience will consume that content was very different. Instagram is very perfect and curated and looks nice and glossy and perfect is basically the word there. TikTok's a little bit raw. So I think when you have your strategy, work about what you're trying to do at a top level, work around the audience and how the best way that they can engage that, and then your platform strategy will fall off the back of that too.
Brilliant. All right, thank you so much.
Pleasure.